Hi there folks, welcome back. We're going to be making a motorcycle animation today, and I'll go ahead and play this here, and it's going to look very similar to this. It'll be in a little bit different style, but that's okay because I want you guys to do your animation in your own style. And if you are to this project here, you should have already completed the butterfly animation and the e-card, and also the Illustrator unit before this Flash unit, because we are going to be using a little bit of Illustrator today. This is what we'll be creating. Now go ahead and open up Adobe Illustrator, and this is where we're going to start. We're going to make all our artwork within Illustrator. So once you get Illustrator open, go to File, New, and you'll see the new document dialog box, and I'm gonna just name this motorcycle art, and we're gonna have a width of 550 and a height of 400 because that is the default size of the document in Adobe Flash. And make sure you have pixels here and landscape orientation, and we'll go ahead and click OK. This is where we're going to start. Now, I'm not going to go through how to create each one of these, but this is the document you want to start with. I'll go ahead and open what I have already created, and you can see here you're going to use your skills that you have already learned in Illustrator to create each of these objects on the specified layer. And I'll start with the first one here, the ground. The ground is just a line going across like this. If you want to make it a little bit more detailed, that's fine. The lamp looks like this, and I just used the pen tool and just clicked around. Click once, click once the whole way around. Up to here I had to click and drag to get these curves. So there's that. The man, make sure he's on one layer, and each one of these I actually used the line segment tool to create the line segments of our stick figure guy. So you can do something like this. Go ahead and make something a little bit more unique with his head. I've had a couple folks put a helmet on him, actually put a hat on, make a little face on the character here. So just do whatever you want to do with that, appropriate of course. And then the bike. The bike's probably the harder part here. You can see I'll expand everything here and go through. You can see starting from the wheels here, I have the Goodyear as one object here. I used it as a text, and then once I drug the text out and curved it around, which you all should know how to do that, I expanded it, went up to object and then expand once I had that text selected, and then you can see here it is now an object. And be smart about how you're making this. Once you make one wheel in text, copy it for the front part here. Don't go ahead and recreate a new one. We're not reinventing the wheel. So go ahead and use copy and paste, or the alt, or select and then alt to copy over. And you can see here basically everything is its own object. And I do have a screenshot of this on canvas.com. So if you are having a hard time getting your shapes created, what you can do is take that JPEG image, that screenshot from this exact document, and then place it into your Illustrator document, and then use the pen tool to trace out each one of these if you need to. But make sure everything is layered out like it is here. So that'll probably take you a little bit to do that. I'm not going to go through how to create each one of these. Once you're done with all your artwork here, go to File, Save, or save as. I'm going to go to save as, and then you're going to browse to your Z drive. So click down here and then find your Z drive. I don't have a Z drive right now that I'm working from. And then just make sure it's saved into there as an Illustrator file, and then click save. I'll just do 2 here, click on save, and then once you click save, there's going to be another dialog box that comes up that looks like this. Once this dialog box comes up, just go ahead and click OK, and then your work will be saved, and then you're done in Illustrator. So let's go ahead and close these out here. Now that we're done with Illustrator, close. And I'm going to find Adobe Flash. If you go to your Start menu, go to All Programs, and then go to Adobe Master Collection and find Flash Professional CS6. And then once this loads up, we're going to go through and import our Illustrator file and make sure it comes in as our correct layers, and then we'll be converting those layers into symbols and then start the animation progress on that point. Okay, now that Flash is open, what we're going to do is go ahead and click on ActionScript 3.0, and that's going to start a new document for us. And you can see here blank layers, nothing on keyframes, but we're going to go ahead and bring that in. So let's go up to File and go to Import, and we're going to import to Stage. And I'm going to go to my Flash folder where I have this saved. Yours will most likely be on your excuse me, on your Z drive. So go ahead and locate that and click on Open, and you're going to find this dialog box. And just be careful if you actually use my screenshot from what you downloaded from canvas.com. You can go ahead and I'm just going to minimize these. You can see here's your ground layer, lamp layer, man layer, bike layer. But if you were using that screenshot, you may have another layer down here that says like image 1 or whatever you had it saved as. Maybe you had it saved as background. You're going to want to make sure that is unchecked, because you do not want to bring in that bitmap file. So just make sure these are the only ones that you are going to bring in. So let's go ahead and click on OK, and you can see here is all of our artwork that we did in Illustrator. I'm just going to drag this up just a little bit so we can see all our layers here. Now the next step is to start working with the layers here, and we need to convert everything into a symbol layer. So what I'm going to do is start with the ground. Actually, let's drag the ground all the way to the bottom. Ground to the ground. So go ahead and lock that layer. It is done. We don't have to do anything else with that. It is just acting as our ground surface where everything is going to adhere to, except for whenever we're doing our wheelie. So let's go ahead and start with the lamp here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag a box around the lamp here, and I'm going to right click this and go to Convert to Symbol. And then once this comes up, let's make sure the name stays as lamp. And we want to make sure this is changed to a graphic. So let's go ahead and click OK. So now it's saved over here. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to, with my selection tool, take and just drag this over here and line it up with the well, for the most part, get it as close as you can to the ground. Now, next thing I'm going to do is draw a box around my man layer. And you can drag a selection box around here, it'll select everything, but you could also go down to the man layer here and then just click on that keyframe, and what it will do is highlight every object that's on this keyframe. And then you bring your cursor up on where your objects are and right click and go to convert to symbol, and then we will just put man on here, make sure it's a graphic, and then click OK. Now let's take our man symbol now, and I'm just going to move him over. Actually, let's move him off the page here. And then the last thing we need to do is convert the bike. So I'm going to click on the bike keyframe here, and then I'm going to go to convert to symbol, and then make this bike still. Whoops, S-T-I-L-L. Bike still, because it's sitting still until he gets onto the bike. So once we actually have the bike start moving, we'll have a new symbol that has bike moving. So let's go ahead and click OK here. Now you can see it is moved as an actual symbol, and I'm going to Control plus to zoom in. And now I'm just going to move, use my nudge keys, my arrow keys, to move this thing down right onto the ground here, so it looks like it's sitting right on the ground. So what I'm gonna do is zoom back out a little bit. I'm gonna go over and let's focus on our guy. So I'm gonna Control plus, move on over here. So let's go ahead, I'm going to click on our guy, and I'm just going to nudge him down a little bit. Actually, I'm going to scoot him over so I can make sure he's lined up right with the ground here. And I'm just going to make sure he's going to start off of the page. So now, let's double click on our symbol here. What that does, it singles out our symbol, and what we're going to do is actually animate our symbol to move. And then once we go back to the actual scene, it will actually do that moving action that we applied to it. So right now in frame 1, I want this thing to look like this guy is facing the bike here. Right now it looks like he's looking at us. We need to modify it to make sure he's looking at the bike. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just click off here, and then see how I hover over the arms? See how it turns into that little curve? If I click and drag, it's going to curve my arms a little bit here. And then I'm going to do it to this one. And then now let's do it with the legs here too. And now you can see it looks like his position has changed to be looking towards the bike instead of towards us. Now what we need to do, this is going to be our first frame. Now if we right click on frame 2 and go to insert keyframe, now we can modify this keyframe here to look a little differently. So let's bring the legs in a little bit closer. And then bring the arms a little bit closer in. And this one's getting a little bit curved, so I'm going to click again to straighten it up. Now we can see we have from frame 1 to frame 2. Now let's do one more insert keyframe here. And then on this third keyframe, I'm going to bring the legs in a bit more. And this one some more. And I want to make sure it retains that curve. And let's actually bring it down a little bit here. You want to make sure it seems like it's still running on that plane. And then let's go ahead and do the arms here. So now we have from here, now we're going to do one more keyframe. This is going to be pretty much the middle frame. And this is going to be look like he's almost completely flat here. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and make sure this leg comes into about here and straight, but don't cross the legs over. It'll not work out for you if you do. And then just making sure these lines stay separate but real close. And this may take a little bit of time if you're new to this. And you can see here, I'm going to back up a little bit. Now we have 4 keyframes, and it looks like he's taking a step here. Now what we want to do, we want his arms and legs to go back out in that same position. So I'm going to go back, like I said, this is our middle position. Now we have 1, 2, 3 action keyframes here, and then the 4th one is going to be the middle one. So I'm going to start with the 3rd one, copy that frame, and then paste that frame to 5. So basically 3 and 5 will look the same. Or yeah, 3 and 5. Sorry about that. And then I'm going to copy 2 and then paste it to 6. So then frame 2 and frame 6 look the same. So if I click on 2 and then click on 6, they look exactly the same. And then 1 to 7. So if we click on the red rectangle here and drag through, we can see it looks like he is having a nice walking motion here. Now remember, if you're having trouble with any parts of what I'm doing here, pause the video, go back and keep trying it until you get it. Maybe watch that section, maybe it's 20 seconds of the video of one thing I'm doing. Just watch that video over a couple times and go back, retry it. Trust me, this thing doesn't come to you in the first time you actually work with it. That's the tough part about these Adobe programs. There's a lot of detail to them, and there's a lot of techniques that you need to really master before you can consider yourself a very fluent user of these software programs. So now once you have your guy walking here, basically this is kind of what we consider, well, it is what we consider animation within animation. So basically we animated our symbol. Now let's go back to our regular animation. So the animated symbol inside of our overall animation. So now if you basically what we need to do is make sure this guy now walks from here over to the bike. And the way he does that is we have to make a new keyframe and then move him over here. And sometimes you gotta mess around with this to make it look right. Everybody's let me back up here actually so we can see it a little bit better. Everybody's objects may be a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. You just want to make sure each object's proportional to one another. And if you see that the guy's like a lot smaller or a lot larger than the bike, in this first frame is where you want to use the free transform and then resize as needed. But I'm going to go ahead and leave mine like this. He looks a tad bit smaller than the bike, but nothing too significant. So I'm just going to go back to my selection tool here. And right now, I'm going to go ahead out on the ground layer. Let's say to 20 keyframes, and then let's right click and actually check that. I'm going to go, this animation, it's going to be about 80 frames long. So I'm going to go all the way out to 80 and go to insert frame. And what that does, it leaves that ground layer on for 80 frames now. And all our other stuff is on for only 1 frame right now. So we know the bike's going to be staying there until the guy gets onto the bike. So let's say that's going to take 10 frames to happen. So I'm going to go out to the bike and insert a frame. So now frame 1 through 10, the bike is on as well as the ground. Now we need our man to walk from this point to this point. So in frame 10, we're not going to go up to insert frame, we're going to go to insert keyframe here. And what that does, it copies frame 1 to frame 10. And to get to that, just right click. So now you can see from frame 1 through 10, it's going to play my 1 through 7 here, and then it's going to start to repeat the cycle as needed. Now what we need to do is then move this guy in keyframe 10 to over here. So I'm going to click and use my shift to move over here, and you can see now we have from 1 through 9 he's here, and then in frame 10 he's moved in front of the bike. So now let's right click in the middle here and go up to create classic tween, and you can see here that he is now walking to the bike. And like I said, this may take a little bit to get to look right. So if I play through here the first 10 frames, my first impression is this is way too fast. So I'm going to go ahead, and if you press enter on your keyboard whenever your time indicator is at 1, go ahead and press enter and it will play through. And right now that is going way too fast. So what we want to do is prolong these 2 keyframes from 10, and I'm going to click on it once and then click and drag down to 20. And I'm going to do the same for the bike layer. Click once and then click and drag to 20. And now you can see if you press enter, it slows it down. And one more time. So there we go. Good. Alright, now there's a couple other actions that will happen at this point. You can see here my feet, at some point it's off, some points it's on. That's the manipulation of your actual man keyframe. You can see here what it's animated. If you click on the man symbol and then click this little play button up here, it'll show you what it's actually animated to do, and you can tell the feet aren't exactly on the bottom. Right now that's not a big issue. If you really want to change it, what you have to do is double click into your keyframe, and then in the frames where the feet are actually coming up off the ground, which I think it's this one, you just have to drag the feet down so they're right in line with that ground. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it the way it is. So now once we get to this part, he has to hop onto the bike. So right now we have a man layer, and actually I'm going to slow, well, if you double click on this layer, you can, I'm just going to name this man walking, because that's what he's doing. If you press play here, the man's walking. Now we want to make another symbol, and our other symbol is going to be a man riding layer. So let's right click this layer, go up to duplicate, and this is going to be man riding, and then click OK. Now that's going to occur right at keyframe 21. So what I'm going to do is make sure 21 is selected, and then drag, whoops, I have to right click and insert a blank keyframe here. And actually what I'm going to do on the bike layer is, let's prolong this out to about 25. That's going to end up changing. So now the bike's still on at this point. Now with our number 21 keyframe selected on our man layer, and it should be a blank keyframe there, and you know it's blank because it has a white circle in it, and it's a white keyframe, so that means there's nothing on this keyframe. So now let's take our man riding layer and drag it into here. Now we basically need this guy to look like he's now on the bike. So what we're going to do is double click our man layer, well, our man symbol here, and make sure it is the man riding symbol. If you're on the man walking, you're going to mess the whole earlier part up. So make sure you're on the man riding layer. And if you click here, click on frame 2 and then shift click to that last frame, which mine is 7. Let's go ahead and right click and go up to remove frames. So we're basically back now to one keyframe, and now this one keyframe we're going to modify this guy or this rider to look like it's riding the bike. So I'm going to Control plus to zoom in here, and I'm gonna select one leg, delete it, select one arm and delete it. Now see, if I hover over this part, I can drag up, and it's only going to let you drag one part at a time, so make sure you click that corner. Make sure it's not selected, and then it'll allow you to grab that one part. So I'm going to put the back about right here, because that's basically where the seat is. And then let me click on this part here. And you want to click and drag again whenever the object is not selected. This box is around it whenever it's selected. So if I try and go to the corner here, it's going to move the whole thing. Control Z. If it's not selected and I grab the corner, it's going to just modify then that corner of that object, and I'm going to actually make sure it's touching this part up here. And then I'm going to select the head, and I'm going to actually I want to move it down here, so make sure it's selected and then click and drag. And then I'm going to move the body to here, and I'm actually going to move the arm up a little bit here, and then I'm going to bring the arm out a bit more. It looks like he's stretched out over the thing. So now he doesn't do any movement once the bike is moving. So all we need is one keyframe that looks like this on our man riding symbol. So once you have that done, go ahead and click the back button here, that blue arrow, and you can see now we have our walking man, and then once he hits this frame, he is on the bike. And now what we need to do is, once he hops onto the bike, right on frame 22, the bike will start to move. So I'm going to click once on that frame, and let's move this keyframe down to 22. And actually, if it did what mine did here, I'm just going to click on frame 23 and then hold in shift and then click on frame 25 and then right click and go to remove frames, so we just have this one keyframe. Now we're going to leave this keyframe on. Let's go out to frame 40, right click, and this is on the man layer. Right click and go up to insert frame. So now we have our guy riding up until 40, and then right now this is basically our bike still keyframe, or our bike still symbol. We don't want the bike still symbol on right now on this keyframe. We want bike moving to be on, but we haven't created it yet. So what I'm going to do is go over to bike still, right click, and go up to duplicate, and this, I'm just going to name this bike moving, and it's going to be a graphic. So let's go ahead and click OK. So now there's our bike moving symbol. Now let's make sure this keyframe on the bike layer is selected. And like I said before, we do not want the bike still symbol to be on this keyframe. We want the bike moving symbol to be on this keyframe. So what I'm going to do is just press delete whenever we come to that. And now we're going to drag the bike moving right back in that same exact position that the regular bike layer is. So you can see it's right here. But whenever we're on this keyframe, we can't actually see where that last frame was, which is a problem. So Adobe Flash has this thing called an onion skin. So if you click on the onion skin, which it is right here, what it does, it brings these brackets up, and I always like to see the keyframe that I am on as that last keyframe for this layer. And if you bring this bracket back, it shows you a preview of the well, not really a preview, it shows you the previous frames. So if you drag this back, it's going to show you each of those frames in a transparent view. But all we really need to see is that last keyframe. And let's take our now bike moving layer and make sure this on the bike layer frame 21 or no, frame 22 is selected. And then I'm going to click on the bike moving, and I'm going to move it onto here. And if I do a Control plus, you can see the outline still of the one behind it. So what I'm going to do is use my nudge tool, which are the arrow keys, to line that exactly up with that onion skin. And once that is done, I'm going to back up a little bit here, and then I'm going to take the onion skin off, and you can see now that frame blends right. Actually, you can see a little bit of a movement there. It's because I am not exactly in the same position, so I'm just going to click on that once and then nudge it down one click, and then let me go back and forth. Yep, now it's perfect. It's not moving at all between these two frames. Two different symbols, one's bike still, one's bike moving, but they look like they're the same frame, and that's a good technique for this animation, Flash animation. So now we need to make this bike moving symbol look like it's actually moving. So what I'm going to do is just click on this number 22 keyframe that bike moving symbol is on, and I'm going just to double click that symbol. Now it is going to open up all of basically everything that's on that bike moving symbol. So I'm going to zoom in here, and what I want to do is take this Goodyear graphic, and we need to make it look like it is spinning around, and we need to do the same thing. Let me actually back up just a tad bit. We're going to do it one at a time. So basically both of these Goodyears are going to be in this position on the first keyframe. So let's go ahead and right click on keyframe 2, go up to insert keyframe. Now I'm going to click on the first Goodyear, and I'm going to click on the free transform tool. Now I'm going to take this little pivot point here and move it to the middle of the wheel, about right there, and then whenever I rotate this, it's going to go right around that middle point of the wheel. And now once I have that one moved up, I'm going to click on this other one and do the same thing. So let's move this to the middle here, and then bring this up. So now between our first two keyframes we should have this to this. Now I'm going to right click that third keyframe, or that third frame, and go to insert keyframe. I'm going to click on that back wheel again, and then rotate it some more, and then I'm going to do the same with this front one, rotate it some more, and then let's go ahead and insert another keyframe, and we're going to be repeating this process here for about 6-7 keyframes. Let's see what it ends up being here. You don't want to go too short or too long with each movement. And it does take a little bit of time and patience, but remember, patience is a virtue. And the more patience you have, the better you will be at this. So you can see here that now the graphic here is starting to move around. So you can see the G is about right here to start, and then once we go to 5, the R is pretty much where the G was. And now I'm just going to go one more keyframe and then just make sure that this is going just a little bit farther than that. Whoops. And then basically it's going to complete in about 6 frames. Now again, this is an animation within our animation. So let's go ahead back here, and let's leave this frame on until 40. So let's go ahead and right click on 40 and go to insert frame. So now this, let me back up. This is what we should have at this point. Alright. He's walking up, getting on the bike, and the bike starts moving. All with the matter of animating a few symbols and then putting it together in our final stage scene area. Now that we have the bike moving, we need, that's whenever the lamp comes into play. You can see here we haven't done anything with the lamp yet except convert it into a symbol. So let's go back to frame 1 and we can see where the lamp is right now. So let's go ahead and I'm going to take the lamp layer and move it underneath these other two layers, the man and the bike. So it's going to be underneath those two and it's going to just show up in the background. So what we need to do is whenever the bike looks like it's moving, we need then this lamp to start going past in the background, and it's going to make the bike look like it's actually going down the road here. So I'm going to Control plus in here a good bit, and I'm going to move over, make sure this is selected, and I'm going to go in a little bit farther here. And I'm going to make sure this is right down to where the actual ground is. So I'm going to click and hold in shift to drag over here. As long as there's no gap between here, which there isn't, then we're good. So I'm going to click and then hold in shift just to drag straight back over. And once you click and drag, holding in shift will help you out significantly. So let's go ahead. I'm going to Control minus to back up. Now this lamp is okay sitting here until he gets on the bike and starts moving. So from here to about right here, the lamp is going to be off to the side. We're not going to see it moving yet. Now, at this point, let's go ahead and right click, that's on keyframe 21, and go to insert frame, and that will leave this lamp keyframe on for that long. Now, let's go ahead on frame 22, let's go insert keyframe, and then this is it's going to start here and it's going to end up over here once the bike is moving. So let's go ahead and right click and let's go to copy frame, and then let's say by frame 35 let's paste it right there. We want this to be over here, and then in order for that to happen, we need to right click and go to create classic tween, and now as soon as the bike starts moving, the lamps start going. So now, let's bring this back to reality here. If they're really, say it's going down a city street, there's going to be more than one lamp. So let's click on 22 and then hold in shift and click down on 35. And let's copy those frames, and then I'm going to click right on 36 and then paste frames. So then it'll be a recurring cycle, and we want that to happen pretty much through the whole let's do one more, not the whole animation. Let's copy that again and then go down to 50 and then paste frame. Because you got to remember, towards the end here, we're going to have him stop the bike, get off, and walk away. So now, now that he's moving on the bike and the lamp is going, it's kind of boring if he's just riding the bike. Let's make him do a wheelie. So let's click. We're going to be using our man riding and our bike layer, or the bike moving layer rather. And so let's go ahead and I'm going to select 41 in both the man and the bike layer. So I'm going to click the one keyframe, holding shift, and click the other one. And let's go insert keyframe for both of those. So now what we're going to do is use our free transform in 41 to start him in a wheelie. So I'm going to make sure both of those keyframes are selected. Then let's go ahead and click on the free transform tool. So now I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here a little bit so you can see. So what we need to do now is copy these frames and then make sure you have both 45 keyframes selected, and then paste them. And then while 45 is selected, we're going to move this pivot point, this white point you see in the middle, drag that down right into the middle of the wheel. And then what I'm going to do is rotate this up like this. And I am going to then right click in between those frames that we just copied and pasted and go to a create classic tween. On both of them, and then you will see it will gradually go up into the wheelie. So now we're going to leave that wheelie on for about 10 frames. So let's go down to 55 and make sure both of those keyframes are selected. And then right click them and go to insert frame. And you can see now our wheelie goes up and stays on. Now we have to do the reverse order of bringing this thing back down to the ground. So what we need to do is make sure 56 is selected and go up to insert keyframe. And then let's go down to 60 and just make sure 60 is selected and go ahead and paste frame, because remember this was the last thing that we copied and pasted, so it's still on our clipboard. So if you just select them and paste them. Now before you start to rotate this thing, you have to move the pivot point. So click and drag the pivot down to the middle of the wheel here, and then we can create a tween for both of those. Now let me zoom out, and I'm going to play this from the beginning here, and that's what we have so far. Now once he comes down from the wheelie, we want him to still be moving. So let's go ahead and let's prolong these two keyframes to about 70. So right, make sure they're both selected, and go to insert frame. So now once it comes down from the wheelie, it's still rolling here. Excuse me. And now you could leave the lamp off here, because at this point we're going to have him stop the bike and get off and walk away. So what we need to do is insert a blank keyframe on 71 for both the man and the bike layer. A blank keyframe. And now we're going to use the onion skin again, because what we have to do is put our man walking layer and man riding layer, or no, the man walking layer and then the bike still layer onto these two frames. So let's go ahead and click on the onion skin, and it is right here. And we can see here that this is where the bike's position was. So let's go ahead and start with the bike. We'll click on here on this keyframe, and I am going to go to the bike still symbol and drag that on. And I'm going to actually Control plus to zoom in a little bit here. And I'm going to make sure that we're lined up right to this other keyframe, or this other frame rather. And I think that's pretty good there. Let me do a Control minus, okay. And I'm going to click on the man layer and then take the man walking symbol and drag it on to about right here. So let's go ahead and then turn off the onion skin, and now we have from here to here. So now what we have to do is pretty much do the same thing we did at the beginning of the animation here. We're going to have him walk off of here from 71 to 80. So what I need to do is, let me zoom out just a little bit here. And I'm going to right click on 80 and go to insert keyframe for the man layer. And I need to go to 80 on the bike layer and then just go to insert frame, because it just needs to stay on for that long. So now let's go ahead and click back on the 80 keyframe of the man layer, and then we're going to move this symbol off of the screen here. And then it's just a matter of going to insert or create classic tween, and you can see now that he is now walking off the screen. Now let's go ahead and press enter, and you can see the animation in full. You may want this to go a little bit slower at the end, because it really, if you play it here at the end, he really scoots off the page. So if you just select all three of these keyframes, well, basically the whole line of keyframes, and then click and then drag down. Let's go down to 85. Then what it's going to do is just make that a little bit longer. He doesn't scoot off so fast. You could even make it longer than that. So about 85 keyframes here. And if you feel like the whole thing's overall too fast, you can go down and adjust the frames per second rate. And that'll end up slowing down or speeding up, whichever way you take it. Let's make sure we do a file, save as, and this is going to be my Flash motorcycle tutorial. Motorcycle animation, and I'm just going to name this one tutorial. Don't name yours tutorial. If anything, put your last name there, and then go ahead and click save, and then press Control Enter, and it's going to give you your shockwave file here, and this will show up as, you'll see this little icon on your Z drive wherever you just saved your Flash file, and that shockwave file is what you have to upload to Canvas website for grading. Thank you for watching the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.